Hello. In today's class, we will discuss Jainism, and this is the third class. In today, we will discuss the Saptabhanga Naya, Syadvada, as a doctrine or theory of Jainism. Before we start, I must recap for you what we had discussed last two classes. Now, combining these last two classes, I will briefly inform you what we had discussed, and after that immediately we will proceed to the Syadvada as a doctrine of Jainism. We started with Jainism by saying that Jainism took a long time to establish its theory. Henceforth, the school Jainism was considered one among the other schools in Indian philosophy. Jainism is the school derived from its root Jaina. Jaina means conquer the passions. So therefore, Jainism always focused on the concept saying that one needs to conquer his or her passions. Passions includes raga, dvesa, desires, so and so forth, even attachment towards the different objects in this world. Further, they said that there are two kinds of realities that we find in this earth. One is living creature as a reality because they exist in this earth, and the other side there is a non-living creatures. So therefore, you find two realities. Further, they said that creatures. So therefore, you find two realities. Further, they said that each substance has innumerable characteristics. So this is Toto brings some of this theory of Jainism. This theory is known as Anekantavada. It is a metaphysical doctrine of Jainism. This doctrine Anekantavada states that there are innumerable substances exist in this earth, and each substance has innumerable characteristics, because they said that living creature and non-living creature. Therefore, they conclude that there are plenty substances exist in this earth, and each substance has innumerable characteristics. Further, they derived the two concepts, the epistemological and logical derivation. They said that Syadvada and Naya, there are two doctrines can be derived from the metaphysical doctrine Anekantavada. Syadvada and Naya, these two theory, and Anekantavada is a theory. These three theory put together constitute the principles of Jainism. There is a metaphor they have used. There is a bird having two wings. The bird is the essence, which is known as Anekantavada, whereas the two wings of the bird is known as Syadvada and Naya. Further, they said that since each object, each substance has innumerable characteristics, we as a human being having a limited knowledge, we cannot identify all the substances that exist in this earth, and even we cannot even identify all the aspects of a particular substance. Naya is a doctrine talks about the analytical view of reality. It expresses that whenever we judge an object, we judge that object from a relative standpoint. So henceforth, our knowledge about that object is partial in character. Further, Naya speaks that whenever we try to judge an object, our knowledge is so partial that we cannot able to claim about the whole object as such. So therefore, we must give respect to others' opinion or judgment on that object as well. It further enunciates that whenever we are judging an object, we are judging that object in relation to other objects, because an object is related to other objects as well. For example, an object has so many characteristics. When we judge a particular characteristics among other characteristics of the substances, even our knowledge about that particular aspects or particular characteristic of substance is also relative in character, because whenever we are judging to that aspects or characteristics, we are relating to other characteristics of that same substance. So, therefore, by considering the doctrine Nayavada, they conclude that, or they submit that whenever the cognizer cognize an object or judge an object, it is from the relative standpoint. So, if somebody mistakenly consider the relative standpoint as the whole standpoint about the object, then we commit the fallacy Nayabhasa. In the previous class, we had discussed the sevenfold Naya. Some of the Naya that I would like to recapitulate, that Nigama Naya, Rajasutra Naya, that Samaviruddha Naya, then Sabda Naya, so on and so forth. The Nayavada also said that it is the Kevala-Jnani, the omniscient person is one who can able to know all the aspects of a particular substance. But we as a human being, we as a cognizer, having a so limited knowledge, as a result we cannot cognize an object in its full form. And further also it was claimed that if we put together all the 7 forms of Naya, the whole cannot able to explain the complexity of the nature of an object. Nayavada having 7 forms of judgment, here Jainism claims that if you put together even the 7-fold of Nayavada, it cannot able to explain the complexity of the object. So, from this you can able to know that how the cognizer knowledge is so limited in any context, and how the world and reality is so vast. Now, moving further to Syadvada. Syadvada is derived from the word Syat. Syat is literally translated as perhaps, somehow, probably, or something which is very relative in character. Therefore, while considering the Syadvada, they said that instead of saying the table exists, we can claim that relatively the table exists. Therefore, here Jainism is very clearly pointed out that we should not say that the table exists, because the table as a substance has many characteristics, many aspects. We may not be able to know all the aspects of it, because we have a limited knowledge. You can also realize the same concept. Suppose a table is presented before you. Now, you can see the table from a particular angle, and once you move to other side and you again see the table may not be looks like the same edge you had seen in just 2 minutes back or from a different angle. In this context, Jainism said that every knowledge of a cognizer towards an object or a fact or an event is partial in its character, it is relative in its standpoint. So, therefore, they said that instead of saying, for example, the grass is green, we must claim that relatively speaking the grass is green, or perhaps the grass is green, because neither we can claim about the whole greenness of the grass, nor we can able to know all the varieties of grass that available in this earth. Henceforth, it is good for us to claim that, or it will be true for us, it will be real for us to claim that relatively speaking the grass is green or the table exists, instead of saying the grass is green within quote and unquote and the table exists in quote and unquote. Now, further Syadvada said that there are 7 forms of judgment we find in Syadvada, and these 7 forms of judgment, if you put together, it could able to explain the complexity nature of an object. In one side you find that Nayavada, it is very relative in character, and whenever a cognizer is judging an object, he or she is judging that object from a relative standpoint, and also his judgment to that object depends on relation to other objects to that object as well. So therefore they said that it is an analytic view of reality. On the other hand, when they discuss about Syadvada, they said that Syadvada also had 7 forms of judgment, and that 7 forms, if you put together, it could able to explain the complex nature of an object. However, in Nyayavada it is not so. If you put together all the 7 forms of Naya, it could not able to explain the complex nature of object as well. Now, in today's class, we will discuss what are the 7 forms of judgment on Syadvada Jainism prescribes, and how it is relative in character, and after that we will discuss some of the comments other schools or thinkers made against Syadvada. Then after that we will discuss the ethics part of Jainism, whatever Jainism view on ethics, on moral grounds. Now, there are 7 forms of judgment that you can see: Syad asti, Syad nasti, Syad asti cha nasti cha, Syad abhyaktavyam, Syad asti cha abhyaktavyam, Syad nasti cha abhyaktavyam, Syad asti nasti cha abhyaktavyam. These are the 7 forms of Syadvada. Now, first we will discuss the Syad asti, and after that we will discuss one after another as it is written sequentially. Now, as Syadvada said that our knowledge, a cognizer knowledge about an object or the aspect of an object is relative in character, and that is the real, because whenever we judge an object, we judge that object from a particular standpoint. An example, if I say the table exists, what it means is that the table is made of wood, and further it has certain breadth, width, length, color, so and so forth. Therefore, as a cognizer, if I say the table exists, what I mean is that in a particular time, in a particular space, the table is made of a particular substance, and it exists with having a particular breadth, length, height, so and so forth. And this table cannot exist in the same time in other place, because this a particular table can exist in a particular time in a particular place. If somebody said that the table cannot exist in other places with having the same breadth, size, length, so and so forth, then that person, whoever is making a statement on that object table, is also equally real as me as a cognizer. I am saying the table exists before me of having so and so features. Now, whenever I as a cognizer or me as a cognizer making a statement on a table saying that the table exists before me because the table is created out of wood, then it has certain length, certain height, so and so forth, and it is presented before me, and it is occupied some space with having a particular time. Now, my statement on that object or my judgment to the object table is real. Now, let us say my friend making a statement or judging to that object in a negative standpoint, saying that the same table cannot exist in other room in the same time of having the same space, same size, same length, so and so forth. Therefore, my statement is real as well as my friend's statement on the object table is also equally real. Whenever Syadvada said that Syada asti, that means it is from the relatively standpoint we claim that an object is real because it occupies certain space, it exists for a particular time of having so and so features. This is all about Syada asti. So, now you can see that whenever we are judging an object, how it is relative in character, because we are judging that object from a particular standpoint. Therefore, Jainism claims that whenever we accept our standpoint, we should not ignore other standpoint on that object as well. In the second point, if you can find that Syad Nasti, relatively a thing is unreal. That means the table cannot exist in the same time in two places. If the table exists in the place x, it cannot exist in the place y in the same time of having the same size, same length, same breadth, same height, etc. Therefore, Syad Nasti is also a judgment of an cognizer, and it is also equally treated as real as we treat Syad Asti. Now, once you understand Syad Asti, Syad Nasti, now you put together Syad Asti cha Nasti cha. That means, relatively speaking, a thing is both real and unreal. What it means is that from a particular standpoint, a thing is real, and from other standpoint, that thing is unreal. From my standpoint, the table exists, therefore the table is real. From my friend's standpoint, the table does not exist in another room of having the same features. Then his or her standpoint is also equally real. So therefore, here Jainism claims that both the standpoint can be real and can be equally treated as true, because there is no contradictions involved in it. Because whenever I judge, it is real, it is from a particular standpoint. Whenever my friend judges to that object, it is his or her standpoint, and these two standpoints are different from each other, and henceforth there is no contradiction we find in it. Now moving further, Syad Abhyaktavyam, that means relatively a thing is indescribable, because if you remember or recapitulate whatever we said about Anekantavada, Anekantavada expressed that there are innumerable substances exist in this earth, and each substance has innumerable features or characteristics. Further, it is claimed that we as a human being have limited knowledge. Since we have a limited knowledge, we cannot be able to identify all the aspects of that substance. If at all we are judging that substance, it is from a relative standpoint. Therefore, many other standpoints we may not be able to know that. As a result, whatever way we try to describe an object, it is not all about that object, or our description is not the complete description about that object. Henceforth, our judgment is relative in character and it is indescribable, because the description we make on an object is partial in character, it is not a full description about that object. Now further they said Syad Asti cha Abhyaktavyam. Now whatever we describe positively about that object, of its existence, everything, again that is relative in character, because having the limited knowledge we could not be able to explain all the aspects of that object, though we could be able to know some of the aspects of that object. For example, whenever we claim that the table color is so and so, it has a particular height, it has a particular length, breadth, so and so forth, it is a very relative in character. There may be many other characteristics found in that table. Henceforth, they say that relatively a thing is real and at the same time indescribable. Now the next point they are saying that relatively a thing is unreal and also it is indescribable, because whenever we try to explain something negatively from a different standpoint, our explanation to that object may not be found in its full form. Therefore, they are saying that whenever we explain an object from a different standpoint, from a negative standpoint, our description of that object may not be in its full form. Therefore, many things remains to describe further. Henceforth, a thing is unreal and at the same time may be indescribable. Now the last point, if you see that Syad Asti Nasti cha Abhyaktavyam, that means relatively a thing is real, unreal and indescribable. Now you just recapitulate the third point, Syad Asti cha Nasti cha. in a particular point you can claim that a thing is real, and your friends or other cognizers can also claim that a thing is unreal, because whenever you claim that a thing is real, it has a particular existence, standpoint, and it exists with so and so features. Whenever your friends claim about that object, said that that same thing may not exist in other place of occupying certain space, having a same time, and having all the same features. Now he is saying that relatively, whether you speak about the existence of object or non-existence of object, it is very limited in character. The explanation to that object won't be in its full form. From one side, if you see that existence of object, neither we can able to explain the whole about the object. From the other side, if you see the negative standpoint of the object, in that case also we could not able to explain all the aspects of that object. Therefore, they purposefully claimed that relatively a thing is real, unreal, and indescribable. So now they said that if you put together all the 7 forms of judgment, it could able to explain the complex nature of object, because you are explaining from a positive standpoint, you are explaining from a negative standpoint. So henceforth, by claiming that whenever a cognizer is cognizing an object is a relative in character, in the same time they say that the relative character also is true from a particular standpoint. Now therefore they said that all the judgments are valid and beyond doubt. Further they claim that Jainism are not the subscriber of skepticism. What they mean here is that whenever they claim from a particular standpoint that the thing is real, certainly they do not have a doubt, they do not have prejudiced concept for considering the other's opinion, saying that a thing may not be real from so and so standpoint. To simplify further, what Jainism expresses that whenever a cognizer is speaking about a particular object from its positive standpoint, then the object or the thing may be real, and whenever he or she claims about the reality of the object, in the same time he or she may not disagree with other standpoint, those claim that the object won't be real because their standpoint is different than his or her standpoint. So in one side they claim it is a reality, and at the same time they are not disagreeing with other standpoint, and other side whenever the other cognizer speaking about the negative standpoint of that object, they are not also disagreeing with the cognizers, those cognize that objects from the positive standpoint. Now I believe you will be clear enough to understand what is Syadvada and how Jainism describes the complicated concept of reality by the help of 7-fold of Syadvada, which is known as Saptabhanga and Naya. Now some of the criticisms other schools put forward against Syadvada, now let us discuss all these. Buddhists and Vedantins, they said that Syadvada is a self-contradictory doctrine, because they question that can there be a case where light and darkness go together, because Syadvada said that Syad asti cha and nasti cha, that means a thing can be judged as real as well as unreal for the same time. In a particular context, an object can be judged as real and unreal. Now the Buddhists and Vedantins are asking questions to Jainism, saying that can there be a possibility where light and darkness go together? So if it is not so, then Syadvada as a theory cannot be accepted, or it is not a acceptable theory, because it contradicts, it is contradiction in terms. Now further, Santarkita, he said that Syadvada doctrine is a madman's cry, because a madman does not know what he or she is delivering. In the same way, Jainism, while describing about Syadvada, they may not know what they are saying, because often they say that a thing is real and at the same time that thing is unreal. So how how it would be the case that a thing will be real and unreal at a particular time. Now Shankaracharya also made a claim against Jainism. They said that Syadvada appears like the words of a lunatic. Again, they also subscribe that whatever Jainism said about Syadvada, it is not true or real. It appears to be like a words of lunatic. We cannot blow hot and cold air in the same breath. Whenever you inhale or exhale, can there be a possibility that whenever you exhale both hot and cold air? It is not possible. Either it will be hot or cold. You put your finger in front of your nose, and when you exhale, you find that either your breath will be cold or hot, but it cannot be hot and cold at the same time. And if cannot so, how can Syadvada as a theory prescribe that a thing is real and unreal in a particular standpoint? So therefore, Syadvada doctrine is self-contradictory. Now Ramanuja also said that light and darkness cannot go together. If it is so, then how come existence and non-existence can be combined? And therefore, to claim that an object exists is real and the object does not exist in the particular time is also real is a madman's cry. Now, if all our judgments are relative, then how can we be able to know a person Keval Gyani? Now further, many other schools put together, they ask a question to Jainism. They are saying that if everything is relative, because you said that in Nayavada things are relative, in Syadvada also our judgment about an object is relative. If it is so, how can you think that with our limited knowledge we can consider or we can conceive some idea? The idea is about an omniscient person and who can able to know all the aspects of a substance or all the substances that exist in this earth. Because in one hand you claim that we as a cognizer, our knowledge is limited. Whenever we judge an object, it is from a relative standpoint. If it is so, then our judgment to the object, to our judgment to an individual who is a Keval Gyani, it is also a relative standpoint. Then at no point of time we as a cognizer are able to claim that he or she is a Keval Gyani or an omniscient person, because to claim that omniscient person, our knowledge too has to have full form, otherwise it will be a relative standpoint. If it is a relative standpoint, then our claim on an omniscient person stating that he or she is able to know all the aspects of an object is not real. Therefore, whatever you are claiming, it really you are contradicting itself. You are contradicting your statement repeatedly by saying that our knowledge is relative, and with the relative knowledge also we can claim, we can identify some of this omniscient person and how it is possible. So these are the comments different schools and different persons, different thinkers made against Jainist doctrine of Syadvada. Then they said that speaking about relative is truly in a vague sense, because Jainism may not be able to explain then a particular object or a particular fact, because if everything is relative, your statement is relative, then what basis you can claim that table is a table or chair is a chair? Because always you may be having doubt whenever you claim an object, because you think that this is a relative, it is a very partial in character. So these are the comments now people made against Jainist doctrine. Now we will discuss Jaina ethics. Jaina ethics is one among the other contributions made by Jainism, and this is real contribution to the Indian philosophical system. Jainism, as I said, that derived from the word Jaina, is to conquer the passions and attachment towards the different objects for different objects in this world. Whenever Jainism talks about ethics, they talks about the duty of a human being. He said that the highest duty or the best form of duty of a human being is to appreciate non-violence and to practice non-violence. So therefore, the highest degree they put that one should practice some ethics means he or she should know what is non-violence, and based on that non-violence he or she can be considered as an ethical animal. Further, they said that we all life are having the essential features is known as soul, and soul is a part. Because of the soul we are able to move. They said that there are two realities, one is living creatures, another is non-living creatures, and both exist in this earth. Now considering the living creature, they said that in all living creature we find life, and life is nothing but the soul for them. Soul inwardly acquires body for its own function. The soul itself is eternal and real, and being the eternal it cannot function unless it acquires the body. So therefore, soul inwardly seeks the body to attach with it, therefore it engages to do different work. Whenever they talks about life, they talks about life starting with worms, insects, animals, birds, reptiles, other creatures and human beings. They said that every life has soul, and the soul is eternal, and every soul being an eternal, it functions in a different way because it acquires the body differently. Body here is a matter. Therefore they said that ethical being is one who does not hurt others, who does not wound others, who does not kill others. Therefore in many contexts you find that Jainism ties a cloth in front of their nose and mouth by thinking that floating life should not insert in their mouth and nose and die. In that way they said that we should not harm even a single animal, a single life in this earth. So therefore they preaches the concept non-violence, and non-violence is the highest form one should practice the ethics in his or her life. They said that soul while acquires the body inwardly, it helps the body to function differently, and hence the body functions differently, it desires many more things for its own purposes. As a result, the soul really is in bondage, and once soul is in bondage and the soul involved in doing many more things by the help of body. Now here the question arises. He said that liberation can be possible only when the body can be detached from the soul. And while explaining the concept that how body can be detached from the soul, they said that liberation can be possible while living in this earth, as well as after our death this can be possible. After our death, once body dies, the soul enters into a different body. Now the challenge lies when a person alive, how he or she can achieve or attain the liberation. That is the real crux, or that is the real contribution of Jainism while preaching the ethical norms for the individual. Those are considered as a living creature in this earth. They said that the principal aim of Jainism are to eradicate bondage from the soul and positively attain liberation, which I said. Bondage of the soul, how it happens? As I said that soul inwardly acquires the body and makes the body to do many more the works, therefore soul is in bondage. He said that because of our past karma, our soul enters to a different body. Therefore they believe in a different karma theory. One is Gotra karma, another is Ayusha karma. Gotra karma is one which decides that the soul will enter to a different body after its death. And here he is saying that Gotra karma is one which depends on your past karma, and based on your past karma, once in your past you died, your soul enters to a different body, and in which body it will be enters, it will be decided by your Gotra karma, because that Gotra karma is nothing but your past karma. And it's the Gotra karma helps you to know that in which family the soul has to be entering, in which body the soul has to be entering, and the soul will acquire some body and it will belong in a which family. And further said that how far the soul has to alive, the longevity of a person is known as Ayusha karma. The same thing I have written here. Jainas believe in many karmas such as Gotra karma and Ayusha karma. Our past karmas determine the family in which we are born, and characteristics of our bodies is known as Gotra karma. In which life the soul will enters and how the body will be appears, it also decided because of our past birth. For example, someone is having a good height, having good health, having fair in color, having hair, and so on and so forth. It decides because of our past karma. And if somebody is short, somebody not able to do many works, somebody's color is black, so on and so forth, it is also decided because of our past karma, as Jainism believes. Therefore, they said there are two karmas, one is Gotra karma, another is Ayusha karma. Ayusha karma determines how far a human being, how far a life will be alive in this earth, and Gotra karma decides in which family a soul has to enter to a body, and that body has to be live in that family. Now, apart from that, they said that our passions towards the different objects for the different purposes really causes us to suffer. And here they said that there are two kinds of passions each and every life have. One is internal passions, another is external passions. Internal passions are those passions where human being thinks many more things to do it, but whenever they do it, that is an external passion. For example, I am thinking that I will be so and so. Whenever I am thinking that, my thought process attached to the different objects, therefore also I am suffering. External passions is talking about those passions when the human beings attaching with the different objects physically, so there also suffering starts. Now the real question is that how to get liberation, how the soul can be detached from the body, and as a result the body never craves for anything, never desires for anything. As a result, the body never attaches to the different objects for different purposes. Now matter and consciousness are found in every part of a living body. They said that soul is the essential element, and the essential attribute of the soul is nothing but the consciousness. So therefore every living creature have consciousness, and henceforth we should not kill any living creatures in this earth, not even the worms, not even the floating life in the air. They said that liberation implies the complete dissociation of matter from the soul. Now they said that there are two types of liberation. One is Sambhara liberation, where one can attain the liberation while living in this earth by stopping the karmic influx, because once you will do some karma, because of your karma, because of your Gotra karma, you need to take birth in the next karma, because soul will be entering to a different body, because in your last birth the soul was not liberated. Therefore the soul enters to a different body, and hence your suffering again starts. The other kinds of liberation is known as Nirjara liberation, where after your death the soul and body will be detached, and henceforth the soul will get some kind of liberation. This is known as Nirjara liberation. Now they claim that ignorance is the root cause of bondage, as Buddhism said. Jainism, in parallel line, in line with Buddhism, they said that ignorance is the root cause of suffering. And what is the ignorance? Ignorance is about not understanding the true nature of the soul, the real nature of the soul. If somebody understands the real nature of soul, then he or she can attain the liberation. In this context, they believe that the knowledge which can help us to understand what is the real nature of soul, and as a result we can free from the ignorance. Continuing further, they said that we must acquire the right knowledge to understand the real nature of soul. When they talks about the right knowledge, here they said that we are accepting something rationally, and that should be a justified belief. Unlike Hinduism, we never accept anything as a right knowledge, because this may be turns into our blind belief. Because in Hinduism, many people claim these are their right knowledge, however, they are not right knowledge, because they are not rationally justified arguments. They are not rationally justified beliefs. Therefore, these beliefs may be turned into blind beliefs. Therefore, counteracting to this view, Jainism said that anything that we accept as a right knowledge, it must be a rationally correct and justified true beliefs. Therefore, they said that we must accept the norms conditions prescribed by Tirthankaras. And who are those Tirthankaras? Tirthankaras are those once upon a time their soul or they were in bondage, and due to their own effort, desire, determination and dedication, they could achieve to liberate their soul while living in this earth as well. Therefore, because of their practical experiences, how to liberate, how to attain liberation in this earth while even living in this earth, their prescription in that sense will be certainly valid, true, and helps others join us to attain the liberation. Therefore, they said that we must accept the norms condition prescribed by the Tirthankaras. Then only we can attain the right knowledge to understand the true nature of souls. Further, they say that to acquire the right knowledge, one must have a faith towards the right knowledge, faith towards the practice of Tirthankara's views. And once you have a faith and go on studying Tirthankara's view opinion, you will have a stronger faith. So therefore, they said that after Samyak Jnana, which talks about right knowledge, they said that Samyak Darshan, it is a right faith. Once you have a faith and continue to study the Tirthankara's views and opinion on understanding the true nature of soul, we could able to acquire the right knowledge for understanding the true nature of soul. Henceforth, we can acquire the liberation while living in this earth. Further, they claim that it is right knowledge and right faith won't help you to attain the liberation. In addition to these two elements, we should also try to do some actions in our life. That is called right action or Samyak Charita, right conduct. So these are the three jewels. If you put together, and if one can do practice of right knowledge, right faith and right conduct, one could attain liberation while living in this earth. While explaining the concept right conduct, they said that if one practice some kind of norms and conditions prescribed by Tirthankaras, he or she could able to control his or her passions, control he or she can able to control his or her senses, thoughts, speech and actions as well. And once everything is in control, one can attain liberation without any further doubt. Therefore, they said that by practicing of three gems or three jewels, one can live in this earth happily, peacefully and blissful life. Therefore, right knowledge, right faith and right conduct, these three jewels are indispensably required to live one's life happily, peacefully and blissfully, and at the same time attaining liberation while living in this earth as well. Now, right conduct should be practiced to stop the karmic influx, thereby bondage and suffering. To do so, one needs to practice the 5 great vows or 5 promises. He is saying that right conduct, if you practice, then you have to adopt 5 vows or 5 promises. And what are those? Those are known as ahimsa, satya, asteya, aparigraha and brahmacharya. These 5 components are known as Pancha Mahavratas, because these are great vows. Now, what is ahimsa? Ahimsa not only talks about non-violence to others, it also talks about that in our thought we should not be violent, we should not speak something which will hurt others, we should not use some kind of language which will hurt others. However, we try to speak always truth. And ahimsa, they said that just speaking truth is not enough. One should practice that in his or her life period, one should not molest not even a single insect in this earth. Continuing further, said that one should neither permit nor encourage to take others' life. It is not that one should intentionally won't take others' life, but also if somebody is taking others' life, he or she should prescribe that person that how life is precious, and he or she should not take the life of others, should not kill others. Now instead of Satyam, they said that speaking truth is good, but however one should know that the blunt truth really hurts others. Sometimes it creates the barriers. Therefore, while speaking the truth, one should modulate in his or her interpretation to speaking the truth. Therefore, this is also one of the great vows on the opinion of Jainism. They said that by practicing this Satya, by speaking truth, an individual can conquer his or her greed, anger, fear, hatred, etc. towards others. So once you practice speaking truth in your thought as well as in your expression, then you could be able to conquer all your passions, this greed, anger, fear, hatred, etc. Further, they said that asteya, that abstinence from stealing. One should not practice the stealing attitude. One should refrain from stealing. He is saying that there are many people who think that their property is life, and once you rob the property from them, that means indirectly you are killing them, indirectly you are hurting them. Therefore, they said that one should not take something which is not given to him or her. If it is not something given to you, then you should not hanker for that, you should not crave for that. Now continuing further, they said that Jainism recognized the sanctity of the property of others like that of their life. In many contexts, they said that to rob wealth is to rob life. Therefore, one should not think of stealing something from others. The sanctity of property is being the logical sequence of the sanctity of life. He is saying that if you take the property from others, that means you are doing hingsa here. So here he is saying that not stealing is related to the ahimsa, which talks about that one should not indulge with hingsa or violence. Now brahmacharya talks about celibacy. One should control his sense organs, one should control his passions towards the different objects, and it is very difficult. And it is very difficult to practice. However, one can do so if he or she desires to do that. And if he could do that, then he can desist from all forms of self-indulgence, such as external and internal, subtle and gross, direct and indirect. The last point is aparigraha, which talks about that abstinence from all desires. This is the last stage, which talks about that if somebody can practice all these 5 vows, there will be a time where one should not have any desire to any of the objects in this earth, because he can or she can understand the true nature of soul in that time. And henceforth, these 5 vows are really prescribed by Jainism to attain liberation while living in this earth, which is known as Sambara liberation. And here, by practicing these 5 vows, one can stop intentionally and consciously by the karmic influx. Therefore, the soul never enters to another body after its death. When the individual dies, the body will be dissolved and the soul will get liberated. Therefore, the soul never enters into a different body, which is known as Sambara liberation. With this conscious effort, one can attain the liberation. The equilibrium of these 3 vows helps the jiva to stop the karmic influx enter into the soul. Liberation in earthly life, if one can attain the liberation, he can attain few perfections known as infinite bliss, infinite power, infinite faith and infinite knowledge. These 4 perfections one need to require. Now the last point, like Buddhism, Jainism claim that Jainism is a religion, however we are not believing the concept God, because they reject the concept God under 2 grounds. The first ground saying that if God is formless, God is bodiless, then how God can use some of the tools to create the whole universe, because the universe is of manifold. The second point, they said that if God is the creator, God is the eternal, then why can't he creates the universe which maintains the uniformity as such. Therefore, under the 2 grounds, he said that Jainism is a religion that is to be acceptable, but we are not believing the concept God. Now I hope that you have understood the Jainism school as such. Thank you.